Hi guys. Did you have a dream to go to Oxford University? Yes, you did. Did you have a dream to be in Cambridge University? I guess you did. Maybe you had a dream to go to Harvard University. But guess what? Today we are delving into those corridors of Oxford University through our own Patricia Mativo in this conversation. I can't wait to hear from her. Maybe I'll get a glimpse of how my dream would look like in the great Oxford University. Hey, hi Patricia.
Hi, Paul.
Welcome on board. This is AI Chemsphere. We talk about artificial intelligence and chemistry at large. And we are super excited to have you on board and also hear about your stories, your journey. I know it might seem a short one and a very straightforward when we see it on social media, but you have the nitty gritties that you have handled also on your way to making it so seamless. So, welcome on board, Patricia. I would just want you to introduce yourself. Tell us who is Patricia Mativo or who is Trish Mativo. Yeah, in short, yeah.
Okay, I am Patricia Mativo. Well, for now, I would say I'm a recent graduate um, from Oxford University with an MSc in Environmental Change and Management. But prior to that, I have a bachelor's degree in analytical chemistry from the Multimedia University of Kenya. And my areas of expertise are basically disability, climate, gender, and of course, when you bring in the chemistry aspect, but you have to integrate it with matters of climate. So, other than that, I apparently hold a few titles, very few titles. Yeah, I've been recognized as one of the top 40 under 40 women in Kenya and 50 most influential women in Kenya. I don't know who was doing the voting, but yeah, they thought I'm one of those people.
I would. I think the ballot was on my side because I could vote you to be top 10.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. With all these titles and all this gold, someone will say Patricia is a winner, But as you understand, we also have like our aspiration. What was your main aspiration? Was it Oxford? Was it any other university? Or how did you like really capture your interest to now Oxford and environmental management? So
okay. I mean, I would say after I was done with my master's, forgive me, after I was done with my undergrad, there's this period where I sort of had pressure of applying directly to my master's. Of course, some of it was coming from my parents, some of it was coming from my mentors. And you'll be surprised that I actually got a master's to do at Multimedia University of Kenya. And that was
mhm.
master's in analytical chemistry. The only reason why I didn't proceed doing that master's then is because my parents believe that students who get first class, they deserve to be rewarded for their, further studies. That is, you have to study for free, either through
Mhm.
scholarships. Yeah. Basically, you shouldn't be paying for because you've already done so much with your undergrad. We know how 4 years are. So getting a
Yeah.
first class is just, it's not a small feat. And therefore, my mom said, nah, if it's anything, then I would want you to get a scholarship or maybe the school should sponsor you. And yeah, multimedia came with some certain options for me, but still, I think I and my parents were not contented. And therefore, I took sort of like 1 year to pursue other things. But then I was working with United Nations Populations Fund. It's
Mhm.
abbreviated as UNFPA. And I liked the work that I was doing. We basically worked with young people. Our work was to advise the UNFPA on matters involving young people on different aspects. Well, the main agenda for UNFPA is basically sexual and reproductive health rights, but also to ensure that every young person meets their full potential, where also women are not suppressed into meeting their full potential because of their gender. I sort of liked that, doing, that work with people. I mean, I also really love the lab. I mean, just before I completed my chemistry, I worked also with Kenya Bureau of Standards, and to date, it remains my very first love in terms of career. It used to be this work that I would really sleep on Friday and say I can't wait for Monday. So I really loved working with Kenya Bureau of Standards, and also matters of chemistry. Then when I sort of transitioned into working with the humanitarian organizations, also sort of loved working with people. I felt more satisfaction. And therefore, during our programs, they kept on asking, what are the things that are increasing, exacerbating inequalities between young people, between different groups in the work that we were dealing with UNFPA. And there's this aspect of climate change that kept on coming up, that young women, I mean, also women in generally, get affected by, disasters, and therefore their rights based on gender are being also suppressed. And also, of course, when you bring in the context of young people, so that aspect of mental health, being a factor that's making them not to lead into their full potential. And of course, I'm an advocate for mental health, so I already understood that kind of dimension. But the aspect of climate, it sort of didn't really make much more sense to me, as much as they tried explaining to me that, oh, on areas where there is famine, like for example, the Maasai, this is the time where they tend to sell their women for dowry so that, so that they can meet their daily needs as families, something as basic food, and that comes at a cost of a young woman. So I was like, you know what, let me do my masters and further and see how to integrate the aspect of climate change and the rights of young people and women, but also see how I can integrate chemistry into this whole sphere. So I really hope I'll remember how to bring in the aspect of chemistry later. So that's when
Yeah.
I looked around and I went back to my mentor. I was like, okay, listen, I know we were supposed to do this masters at Multimedia University of Kenya, but how about if I look for something related to environmental engineering or environmental chemistry? Because I know in chemistry we have that branch of environmental chemistry. And therefore, I looked around to some of the universities that I loved, and one of them was in Hungary, University of Debrecen. And what they had was environmental engineering for 2 years. And I was like, okay, I don't mind going for this. So I applied for that. But still, I was like, there's that aspect where I really wanted to also integrate more to my course with humanities. Then, knowing very well that I'm a purely science person, uh, in high school, I did strictly just 7 subjects, and from these 7 subjects, they were all science subjects, except, well, geography is also a science subject. So I'm
Yeah,
that
correct. Yeah.
strictly, yeah, I'm that strictly a science person. But I told myself, at the end of the day, us as people in the world, we don't do what benefits us, we do what benefits the community at large. And therefore, I said, you know what? This course, I'm basically just going to do it for the community to understand more and see how best I can bring in my supports and my skills. Then I went to the website of Oxford and I looked around and I saw environmental change and management. I looked at the course description and I was like, okay, I think I qualify in doing this. I meet all the criteria. But then there's that aspect of me transitioning from chemistry all the way to humanitarian. It is not a full transition, mind you. I'll go back to how I'll bring in chemistry at the end. Please remind me just in case I forget. So
It's
it
okay.
was me daring myself into getting into very uncomfortable shoes just for the sake of humanities. Honestly, for the sake of people. I remember reading the course description. They said, "Oh, at the end of the term, you have to come up with a thesis of 15,000 words," and I'm like, as a chemistry person, all I know is chemical equations. I mean, we did our
Numbers.
Yeah, we did our undergrad projects, but it was basically to justify the reactions that happened. Like, there's no negotiation that HCL is HCL or something else. We just know it's that. But when it comes to humanities, there's a way that I see a six, you'll see it as a nine. That's how humanities operate. We have different opinions of our subject. But I told myself, you know what, let me try to dive into these uncomfortable shoes. So I applied to the university. Yeah, I got the offer. And yeah, finally, along the way, I was shortlisted for two scholarships and I had to select one. And therefore, I went to the MasterCard Foundation because it's quite generous and it gives a community. The other one is actually Oxford Cambridge Society of Kenya. So, with this particular scholarship, they sponsor two people, strictly one to go to Oxford and the other one to go to Cambridge. Yeah, so I was selected. And for me, I remember that morning when they called, my phone was off. Normally, I leave my phone off at night, and therefore, I wake up in the morning, I receive, tried to calling you, I see emails, I see what's up, and I was like, okay, clearly, I think they can only look for me if I've received the scholarship. And by this time, so what happened coincidentally was the day that I did the interview for the Oxford Studio Cambridge, that evening is when Mastercard Foundation reached out to me and told me you have received this scholarship. So in my mind, I was
Mhm.
like, knowing very well how I performed with the Oxford Cambridge, I'm pretty sure it will come out positive. I was just hopeful. So then they
Yeah.
come to me and I tell them, so apparently, I already have another scholarship, but just advise me because I felt like that was the only kind way to say no to a
Yeah.
scholarship. Yeah, and they're like, we have been, academics for a long time, and based on experience, we'd want you to go with the Mastercard because it will give you much more than what we can offer. And yeah, since then, I accepted Mastercard Foundation, and that's when I joined Oxford, did my program, and of course, um, please feel free to stop me because probably you might have other questions.
It's okay. It's okay. Actually, you're answering all the questions I have. I don't know if I
Yeah.
will have to change my topics.
Okay. Yeah. Then, so coming to the University of Oxford, I know world leading, superb, etc. Um, I would say first, transitioning from Kenya to Oxford. Maybe I didn't have enough support to transition, but also it really didn't quite hit me that I'm actually going to University of Oxford. I just feel like, oh yeah, it's Oxford. Yeah, Oxford. Then we
Yeah.
come and but then when I came here, I was like, wait, hold on. Girl, you're having classmates who have been to Harvard. You're having classmates who have been to Yale. And then there's you girl who came from Multimedia University.
But me, I believe in you. I believe in Patricia, you know?
Yes, yes. I mean, it finally took some time for me to sit down with myself and remind myself, do you know who you are? Do you know where you've come from? Do you know the things that you've achieved? And this was during the exams period, and people would wonder why she just so all freestyle and relaxed. But then I, as Patricia, had to remind myself of my potential that I'm actually good at what I'm doing. Anyway, so going back to coming to this university, um, yes, it's the leading university and they have programs that are quite diverse, but there's that aspect that remember I applied this course for a reason. I applied it for women and for young people. So when I came, I realized that, and going through actually the course description, there's that aspect that it talked about some people go to NGOs, and therefore in my mind I said, okay, probably they're going to have something that's going to meet um the human angle. So coming to the cause, majority of the modules were more on policy related. So at first I was like, okay,
Yeah,
this
I
is
remember
not
you telling me about that argument when you're beginning your master's.
yeah, I was like, okay, this is not what I actually expected. But good thing is we have a course director who would ask for course feedback as time goes by. I think it's twice in a term. And therefore, at first, I was like, this is not what I expected. This course is supposed to be diverse for most people, you know, because we have, us few science buddies, those who came from physics, chemistry, maths, then we have those who did things to do with nature and biodiversity, people who did politics. It's such a diverse course because, climate is something that's integrated in almost everything.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. So there's that aspect. Then there's the other aspect of, okay, most of our experiences here are from the global north. I'm like, if it's anything, climate change is affecting people from the global south. I mean, with polluters mostly coming from the UK, the US, the G20s, then Africa taking the biggest burden, and it's emitting about just 4% of the total global greenhouse gases. And then it's like, okay, now while we're having examples from the G20, we need the countries that are actually, you know, being affected the most to come up as good examples. Then we give that again as a feedback to the course director. Okay, we, in terms of us, very few students who came from the global south. And every time I would raise that, people would be like, yeah, okay, Patricia, we love what you did. Because at times we'll have examples and I'll raise my hand and I'll say, okay, you've given examples from, China, you've given examples from the USA. Are we expecting any examples from any country from Africa? Then the professor would just shy away and I'd be like, yeah, actually, it's high time that I actually updated this. So there's that aspect that me also coming to Oxford, we are also trying to bring in that diverse aspect that, listen, also Africa is involved in this, and we have equally good minds that can join this university, and we need the conversation to also benefit them. So the best way that I benefited from this course, as much as it was a policy base, and from that aspect, our course director is now going to transform the program to, instead of environmental change and management, it's going to be environmental change and policy. Because yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So the aspect of how I brought in now the voices of women and young people is we have modules and we have electives. So with electives, they're sort of modules, but not everyone in a class will do them. So it's more of we choose these modules, and the one that you select is the one that will be examined. So
Mhm.
I had to look around the modules that we are given, and the first one was on climate education. Not was yeah, on climate and environment education. And I was like, okay, with this module, I believe I can bring in my arguments involving the minority groups. Then also on the second term, there was an elective on water justice, and I was like, okay, I remember seeing a story about women in Kibera who had to sell sex to get water, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
apparently, that's a thing. Women have to sell so much to get basic needs such as water. Yeah, you had the story about women in, was it in Kericho, where they have to sell sex to work in those tea plantations.
Yeah, yeah,
Those
yeah.
those those that conversations. So women go through a lot of things for them to just access their basic needs or their basic rights, and that's how I tried my best to integrate my cause into meeting those demands and see how best we can integrate them together. So yeah, I finally did my course, and I remember it was quite challenging. I will not lie. Coming in from a very chemistry background, purely science background, like all my life, I started. So my first high school was in Tanzania. So in Tanzania, we have high schools that are known for just science. We have high schools that are known for humanities and all that stuff. I went to a purely science high school. It means conversations about, I don't know, those other things we did not relate. I was physics, chemistry, maths, biology. Those were our strongholds. And for me, I effortlessly did those subjects, by loving them with no challenges. So changing that to meet, to finally to finally, get into that aspect of humanities, it was quite challenging, but I kept on telling myself, you know why you came here. It was for this particular group of people. I was not even doing it for myself. But then by the time we're getting to exams, I remember telling myself, as much as this course was quite hard for somebody like me who came from a very different background, at least I got what I wanted because through the program I was able to research furthermore on minority groups, involving also persons with disabilities, women, and also how young people can be brought into this conversation. So at the end of the day, for me as a person, I believe we do things that benefit the community first. Another thing, I mean, along the process, of course, I get to have that title that I went to Oxford University. But for me, I know very well that I did this course for the community and I was satisfied. So maybe you I have spoken about the kind of challenges that I went through, and I don't know if you'd want me to go into details into what kind of challenges that I went through. Then
It's okay. I think I'm curious to know what are the challenges you went through, because I don't believe I have experience. I know I've been in field where we have same challenges. You might have a challenge in our policy. Now we are in a field where we have challenges with now the policies are not working. You have the mindset. We can remember with the June
protest.
protest, the whole month of protest. We have the brains, we can think about it. As young people, we have spoken about it. But all these policies are just in books. And
Yeah,
also we have a sketched a sketch opinion of what needs to be done, and literally there's some people who need to do it, and then we tend to lag behind, let's say more so for the particular groups that you're advocating, that is the people with disability and
yeah,
women and also young people. We tend to also use everything we have, our soul, our bodies, to just get to that table. And now you have all this. What do you see your role in now shifting this mechanism of let's operation to now a workable operation? Let's say we have also women who step into advocacy. We actually, I'm sure, Patricia, if you go down to, if you narrow down to grassroots, you'll meet a lot of CBOs working on environmental changes. You'll meet a lot of young people having small, impactful projects that are doing to help their families, their society to be a better place. But all this is resulting to a zero or a negative, because we are not doing the correct there's no support system to like also nurture this to grow. So you
yeah,
being now you're in there. No, how do we
yeah,
move to now women in science, women in wherever they are, how do we
yeah.
move this attention to now these systems we are building are now working, and they're working for our benefit?
Okay, so you've asked things, and a lot of things were going through my mind, but I'll say there's that aspect. Yes, there are efforts, let's say even in the grassroots levels, where they say we are working for this particular group set, we're working for women, we're going to empower women, but you keep wondering the same area where that grassroots CBO is. We still have cases of teen pregnancy. We have still rates of unemployment for women, or unequal pay. Like there's still that aspect. And for me, what I came to realize is the fact that we talk about mainstreaming. So mainstreaming is where we try to bring equity with those vulnerable groups that we have been ignoring for some time, like mainstreaming gender into workplace or mainstreaming disability into workplace. But often it comes at the cost of the people who are being mainstreamed for, like for example women. Let's talk about, for example, in politics, we have the president, we have various positions. Then you'll say, okay, we're having this role for, maybe women to represent other women. But the thing is, them mainstreaming gender, they've not mainstreamed it at a way that it should be done. For example, I believe that for us to mainstream gender, it has to start all the way from the presidency level. For example, let's have a rule where if the president is, let's say, a woman, should it happen, then the vice is a man.
It will
And
happen.
therefore, yeah, like in Kenya, that has never happened. You find presidents, you know,
The
picking
whole body, yeah,
the
even the
whole
prime
body.
ministers,
So
yeah.
yeah, so they take a professional picture for the new, for the new executives, and you wonder where is the woman in this. But then you probably see just one woman, and for them it'd be like, oh yeah, we have mainstreamed women. But now it's because we're having very few voices when we're having mainstreaming. Same goes to disability. We have organizations that say, oh, yeah, we are also incorporating the aspect of disability. We're also incorporating young people. But you think they'll bring young people into their bodies just to act like flowers. Young people will say, we believe this is what should be done. But then they'll be like, they don't know what they're saying. You saw during the protest where young people are trying to come up with innovative solutions, and some politicians will say, oh, they're just making TikToks. They're just, after this, they're going to parties. Like they didn't understand that actually young people we're actually crying because taxes were high, things are really affecting them. Education is not easy for them at this time of era. Yeah, Then now, when you go to PWDs again, they say you're integrating them, but they come up with programs that are not even inclusive in any way. So let's say they'll bring in somebody with hearing impairment. Somebody with hearing impairment, of course, the mode of communication is going to be different from people
Sign
without.
language fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Then they'll bring that person to the meeting and then they realize that, oh, we didn't have a sign language interpreter. Oh, because we didn't have funds for them. Oh, then you bring it. Yeah, then you say, okay, you're bringing in a person with a physical disability. Then you go to have a meeting at a building that is not physically accessible. You understand?
Yeah.
Or somebody who requires the PWDs who require assistance. We call them reasonable accommodation. So at times you find that these organizations don't uh, put funds to also support the reasonable accommodation. So reasonable accommodation could be maybe sign language interpretation, somebody who will aid the conversation to go smoothly, or somebody who will need to come up with their assistance because some of disabilities, people with disabilities cannot maneuver around on their own, so they'll need an assistance. It's like a child will always need a chaperone. So also have PWDs who need like their own chaperone. So we have these aspects where you say you're bringing in people, but you don't actually involve them fully. So during my research, I came to realize that probably one of the main challenges is the aspect of mainstreaming. Mainstreaming comes at a cost of those who benefit. I mean, at the cost of those who it should benefit for. And I thought of, as much as you're going to have mainstreaming, why not have organizations that fully are run by the people who should be benefiting? For example, if it's about disability, then have fund organizations that are fully run for and by PWDs, like the executive person is a PWD, the one who's going to benefit is a PWD, the one who's running these, let's say the communications person, basically everyone, because these are their own challenges and they understand them from first-hand and lived experiences. If it's women, ensure that we're trying to have the two-third gender rule, but it should be in a manner that is actually made without harming anyone's right for women, because women have to give up a lot for them to get into those positions, but it has to be in a manner that no one's rights are being harmed and everyone feels comfortable in getting these roles so that we can all, our rights can come to equity. Anyway, so for me, one of the challenges now while doing this program, there's that aspect that as a woman, of course, I'll go through. First, let me say, there are times when I was doing this course, I would look around and see the kind of minorities that I was representing. Being in the UK, this country is not mine. This continent itself is not mine. So
Fine. Yeah.
I'm a young woman of color. I have a disability. I mean, these are things that I was looking around at times, I was like, okay, these are so many challenges. There are times where I would also speak about, let me see if I can progress to PhD in this same field so that I could do further research. Then some people, I'll not mention who, they'll say, for you, it's going to be a bit also challenging because you're a young woman. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
board has men. The board that's going to select people, most of them are white men. So he was telling me in a manner that to put much more effort into my application because I'll need to really prove why I'm going to do this being a black young woman from a different continent. But anyway, that aside. So after completing my master's and maneuvering all the challenges that are associated with my identities, being a woman, being a person with disability, finally, one of my recommendations for my research was so my research was basically disability lens on climate action. And one of my recommendation was what I just said earlier. As much as we're having mainstreaming, let's have these people themselves coming up with their own initiatives. At times, you can't wait for, let's say the UN to say, okay, we're going to support PWDs. Of course, we need their support, but again, we need action from within ourselves if it's young people. Like for you, Val, you're a woman in science, so you're coming up with a platform that empowers other young people to see, you know, how best they can also be in this field. You've not waited for, to get a lot of funds from UN Women to start doing this. You in your own capacity, you're like, no, I have to empower my own group. So that's exactly the main reason why my scholarship, so Mastercard Foundation, after we're done with our programs, we have the transition period because we had subscribed to a full-time master's program, so we're not working or anything. So there's this period of transition between 4 to 6 months, and they ask if you'd want to go work for an organization. So it's for them to reach out, and if the organization accepts you to be on board, then the scholarship will support with some funds, some stipend, and a little bit of your living expenses from that stipend, your visa applications, your air tickets should there any be needed. So for me, I looked at that angle and I thought, okay, it will be actually quite easy if I decide to, just close my bags, go to South Africa, work for any organization, to help me as a person to transition into work life. It would have been really easy. But then I looked around, there was a reason why I applied for this course in the first place, and it was for these minority groups. And therefore, I had to sit down and understand that let's go back to the drawing board. This we're not doing it for myself. I mean, it will be fine. It will be fun saying, "Hey guys, I'm happy to share that I'm not working in South Africa. I'm not working in, I don't know, Egypt, etc." So I told my scholarship for my Ubuntu transition, I would want them to support me in actualizing my nonprofit for people with disabilities, and it's going to involve the aspect of climate, gender, education, and in the aspect of education, remembering my roots of somebody who came from science, understand that for us to tackle climate change, STEM science is something that is really needed. We need evidence. We don't need just people saying this is what they believe that in the next, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know. For a bit, I always say STEM is a double-edged factor in climate change, because one, it is the main main factor that is
Yeah.
getting us to this point, and
Yeah.
also it's the main factor that will also get us out of this point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So understanding the importance of what STEM plays a role in this aspect of climate. And therefore, one of my thematic areas is to ensure that we recruit more people with disabilities into STEM subjects. And I was very keen to tell them I'm not, the reason I'm highlighting STEM is I don't want just, PWDs to go to humanities because somehow they think it's easier for them to dwell into those subjects. But I want a young woman to go into science, into chemistry, and do a program such as environmental chemistry that will aid in, assisting the environment. And therefore, that was one of my thematic areas in my nonprofit that I want it first to be run by PWDs, and I want its main agenda to be climate action. And I want PWDs to use the resources that have been limited to them, for example, access to education, funding, etc., access to, their basic gender rights, so that they can use all these resources so that they can also support in the climate action. Yeah, and that's why now going through my master's, I have been applying to PhDs in chemistry, and and I call it chemistry for sustainability. This is the aspect.
Mm.
I know it's quite confusing when I tell people that I did chemistry, then I did environmental change and management, then now I'm going back to chemistry. But apparently there's chemistry for sustainability where we have the role is, with chemistry we have sustainable production of polymers. Instead of just
Yeah.
producing plastics, there's better ways of how chemistry can be used to aid, climate action. And that's how I want to see myself in the future. But whilst doing this, I know that based from my master's program and from my scholarship program, I'll be running a nonprofit that will be assisting more people with disabilities to get into this space. So that's where I am right now.
As we are attracting people to join, let's say the young people, the young women, most of the young women and the people with disability to join STEM field. I understand from a point of experience, also being in the field and maneuvering in let me just give an example. Maneuvering in a factory, because that is where mostly you work. Maneuvering in a factory, maneuvering in a very masculine environment isn't that hard, isn't that easy. And as we are attracting these people, we genuinely want to tell them it's not easy, but then we did it. And that is
Yeah,
a conversation I am running all through. It's not, I know I'm not denying the fact that chemistry is hard, as you said, but there's a way to hack it. And I've seen people doing it. I am doing it, and it's okay. So as you're attracting people to join now, the chemistry for sustainability, and your pitch is, let's come in, and as young people, let's speak while we are on the table. What will you tell them? What will you just advise them as they join you? just be honest. Don't tell them, you know what, there's an easy way, I did it. Because I'm sure you did it, yes, but telling someone I did it and you can do it is a word. But telling them what exactly you did will be more impactful. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have also experienced those challenges. Honestly, I don't know why we have to go through so many challenges for us to get where we want to go through. I've been in a space where my identities were used, to see if I'll perform well. And then, yeah, because I'm a young woman, then again, I have a disability. At first, I'll be like, will she even really be able to do the task that we're giving her? Honestly, these are the first impressions that I get from people. And until when they start getting to know me, and then when they start getting to see my output, the work that I'm doing, they're like, oh, she's a very smart student. I'm very inspired. I'm like, inspired by what? I still remember how you looked at me on the first instance that we are not sure with this one. And therefore, even with young people, young women getting to these spaces, at times you get sexualized. At times
Correct.
people, yeah, at times people try to make relationships with you because they feel like you feel safe around them. It's more of a low-key manipulative kind of relationship that you're a woman, anyway, now I'm here as a man and I'll make you feel comfortable in this organization. But no, at the end of the day, us as young women, we have to realize that we have all the skills that it takes. We have to give our efforts. The way you've said it, chemistry is hard. What came into my mind is everything in this world is quite hard, honestly. I mean, other
Correct.
than
Yeah.
other things that people think, but you have to
Actually, most of
choose.
them are hard.
Yeah,
There's always a hard in your field, and
it's
that's
always
why
a
it
hard
works. Yeah.
thing. Yeah. So it's how you persevere and see how best you can, adapt to what you're pursuing and how you can bring in your skills, try to research more, try to give more of your time to understand how best you can love this field that you're taking. For me, honestly, I loved chemistry effortlessly. I went to campus and was like, okay, this is not it's not how easy it was in high school. Because I remember in high school, the days where teachers would think they'll punish us by having, mathematics, chemistry on one day. For me, I was like, this is my best day. I'll just go in. And at times, even I'll either choose one of the subjects which I would not really read so much because it was just on my fingertips. So, going back, it's just us as people to try and give our very best into understanding how we can love. Going back to actually how I even started loving chemistry, physics used to be my first love. Then I remember this one
Mm-hmm.
day, yeah, girl, I have so many things to say. Physics used to be my first love. Then
Mm-hmm.
somehow I found myself actually falling in love with chemistry so bad. So it happened when we were having a chemistry exam, and that was in high school. Back then, when I was in Tanzania before I came to Kenya. And our chemistry teacher was like, oh, I need you guys to perform, do this, this, and that. So for me, what I did was, okay, I revised. Then I took this book where I was like, you know what? How about if I dare myself and revise the whole of this book? I actually revised the whole of that book. And by the time I was halfway, I realized actually there's a pattern to this. This thing is not even hard, it's easy. When the
Yeah.
results came out and I was the very best student, and people wondered how I hacked it, but I was like, the trick is just to revise. Apparently, it's just to revise, and you'll find there's a trick to the things that you think are hard. There's always a way of you getting a you know, a flow of how it should be handled, how you should maneuver around through it. So I'm not saying it's easy as how I'm saying it, but there's always a way into solving situations. That's why we are not in the same problems where we were in like few months ago. There's a way we tackled some and things keep coming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you see, I always look at life with, it's all a cycle. It's all a cycle, and there's a foundation to it. As much as we get to where we have a whole structure, we always have a foundation, and that applies to even chemistry. You just need the foundation, the right foundation, and you're good to go.
Yeah. And honestly, at times we take advantage of the people that came before us. At times I try to wonder how it was being Marie Curie. The I'm like, I look at that woman getting to receive her Nobel Prize and it's just men all around. And I'm like, the kind of challenges that we as young women are, you know, experiencing right now are not as strong as they were then. I'm not trying to, disqualify our challenges. They are very valid. With every generation, there's always challenges for them, but we need to sit back and understand that we are actually at a place where our four women did so much for us to, get to this space. Women are not even allowed in these spaces. But then it took that
Correct.
one
Yeah.
person, yeah. And therefore, all we can do is also us as women not be selfish for the ones who are coming after us. Do things that will benefit the women that are coming after us. If we're in chemistry, then we have to bring in all our skills and our efforts in the ways that we can. Basically, it's sacrificing some of our things and making sure that the women that come after us have it a little bit easier. The same way
Yeah.
now we're having more women coming in into STEM, but again, not for them coming in into STEM and finding that we are having, you know, rooms that are very intimidating. So we also have to stand up for ourselves, not just because, yeah, I know there are women where they'll say, okay, for me, so long as I've just gotten into this space, I'm okay. I don't mind whatever they say they do. I'm like, no, you're representing so many women coming in the years to come. And this
Yeah.
organization, it's not like they're just going to hire you now. People will come and go. But then the impact that you leave, it's how it's going to, show how other women will also be treated. So we have to realize of the spaces that we have, let's call them privileges that we have right now, and not to misuse them for the sake of those coming after us. Yeah.
I totally agree with you because you might walk into currently we have spaces where we're trying to thrive and we are at a better place, we are looking at a past where talking about gender could be forbidden in a conversation, and currently it's easier. Yes, you can be a young person and somebody will just listen to you, give you 5 minutes. Even if they'll be not so attentive, they'll listen to a bit, they'll try to see if you're making sense. And that is a
Yeah.
point where we appreciate that the previous women did, and we also celebrate them this month. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we are really looking forward to other women who will come in and find it easier. They'll have less less challenges. I pray and hope that in 50 years we'll not have this same conversation of
Yeah.
trying to put to find chairs for women in spaces where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And looking at the biological way of human beings, I don't see how less we are, because intelligence, we can't just do what we need to do, apart from maybe if we have a mindset that will allow us to lag behind, but I believe we can do it. Yeah. And just finally, this is our second last question. I don't want to ask more of you. I want us to also have another time to talk about you, maybe when you are in another position. A
Yeah.
second last question I will ask is, now you as a STEM person, you're transitioning into humanitarian. That is applicable because we all here to serve humanity. But then there's now all this responsibility on your plate. You are now in the UNFPA. You are now 40 under 40. You are now, like, you have a lot. You have all this coming along. There is leadership. You're also a sister and you're also a daughter.
Yeah.
And there's education that is foremost, and sometimes you have to make decisions. For you, you are maybe lucky, you have a very nice support system that is your parents and your family. We have a society where, let me just give an example of our country. We have a lady in Turkana or in Masai where they really want to get to a university and they cannot step into that space because all their parents want is uh let them get married.
Dowry.
We want properties.
Yeah.
And they maybe find this episode somewhere and they want to just get a few hope. What can they do to just be better? And what can you tell also for the privileged ladies that are out there? They have support system. How can they, like, really listen to your voice and just say, you know what, we can do it? And then also for you, Kes, you are speaking not only for young women but also
Yeah.
people with disability.
Oh,
I
yeah.
tend to look at, they're also just quite a good number, but we tend to look at them as a segregated number or a portion of the population. I don't know if disability is something that is predictable. Sometimes you might just have like full body today and you might lack it tomorrow, and then the conversation will shift. You'll
Yeah.
shift because you are in that situation. But before then, you're not speaking about them, you're not talking about them. And that is also wrong. So for all these groups that are feeling really out of space, and and also for those who are not feeling up, they really have a passion in science, they really have a passion in environment, but they're finding it really hard to just do it. What is your last hope? Let me say, become the bishop of hope to them, yeah.
Yeah, so you've talked of two things of first the marginalized groups of how they can get to these spaces and how people who are now on privileged spaces assuming that disability is not a factor that they can think of, but then reality does happen. You know, it reminds me again on my research. There's this part, it was as after I think section 2 or 3, as like at times we tend to ignore the voices of PWDs, forgetting that we are all candidates of disability. It could be through
Yeah.
sickness, it could be through age, or it could be through, natural
Yeah.
calamities.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
situations where climate change has actually led to increase of disabilities. When there is floods, people tend to just, break their bonds, or like, so many things happen, and we
Yeah.
get to have new candidates of disability. So I feel like when you bring in marginalized voices, it's a way of us coming in with solutions that we would never even think of in the first place if we excluded them. Like when COVID came, things such as, was it lockdown? For PWDs, some of them, that was nothing. For them, they felt like they've already been living in a
Uh-huh.
life that had COVID already. It had to be lockdown for people to realize that actually you can have barriers that limit you into meeting a full potential. You know, like for
Yeah.
example, when COVID came, the lockdown came, people couldn't go to work freely, people couldn't get their groceries freely. But PWDs have already been experiencing these, challenges before. Like for them, this have been normal that they can't just go easily to a function because there's barriers. So coming in, bringing in the voices mostly of PWDs, I believe they bring in this perspective of coming up with ideas that other people will not think of because they have always been living in this way. They've always been living in anticipation. They've always been living in of what's next, how can I maneuver around this situation, how can I adapt. So even on climate aspect, as much as PWDs have been left out, there's always a way that they have to adapt so that they can live. So then going back to the very first question of the women who feel like they can't get to these spaces, as somebody who came to Oxford, honestly, I never thought I was gonna make it to Oxford. And yeah, but then it happened. I mean, of course, you're a smart student, but then looking at Oxford, you look at it, it's something that's very inaccessible. So when I came here, my mission was to always see how I can assist people of my caliber. Uh, okay, it's for us in privileged positions to also mentor the people who would want to come to get into our shoes. Like for example, me, what I've been doing, I've been running accountability buddies, and I created that group very mainly so that people should not feel overwhelmed or should not feel less of themselves when they're trying to apply into these prestigious institutions or these prestigious scholarships. Because Val, to be frank, I didn't get any support in my application. I really tried reaching out to the people who I believed were in these institutions, but they always responded last minute or after I've done something. So it was not quite helpful. And understanding how that process
Yeah.
was so overwhelming, I am trying my very best to create a platform where we, people who are trying to apply into these funded opportunities, can have that space of, I'm not the only one who's going through this. I'm not the only one who has been rejected today. I'm not the only one who let me keep trying further. Somebody else got rejected twice and now they have been accepted. Let me try again. So it was more of coming up with that platform that we are here to support each other. And not in a way that's intimidating, because I've heard of situations where people would tell me, Trish, before I came into you, I've been looking at videos where people say it's very hard, it's very strict, I must do this, I must do that. So there's a way people also make it very intimidating out there, that as much as they're trying to come up with solutions of this is how you should apply it also, but it's the way how they explain it and people are like, nah, I don't think this is for me. But us remembering that we are humble beings and that it just takes kindness to get to where we are right now without intimidating anyone. And I think that's how it should be, by uplifting other people, even from those farthest from Tukana. It's just speaking to them in a way that they'll understand that you're actually also eligible for this. So don't look down on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Trish. I know my final question will be, what is next for Trisha? I know we are saying congratulations on you're now an Oxford. Do we say, what do you call them?
Oxonian.
Olean. Yeah, you're now an
Oxonian.
Olean.
Oxonian.
Okay, it's Oxonian. It's okay. You know on that book, and then you're also thriving to get to better spaces. So I might just ask you, oh, is it not okay for you to tell us what is your next move career wise, so that we tend to like, okay, if you're getting, I was also, I think I will also roll out a mentorship, a one-on-one mentorship, if at all you're interested to mentor someone. We
Of
can do that
course.
later, but we also need to just know what is next, if at all. Hey, you're motivating a million,
Thank you,
they need to
Val.
know also, you have plans. You're not just satisfied with the Oxfordian. Sorry, remind me. Hey,
Oxonian. So
I
it's
think the
basically
whole
Oxford, then there's a way you bring onion. So Oxonian.
Oxonian.
OXO. Yeah.
It's okay. The whole generation of Oxford will be on my case on social media
You're
if I do it
butchering
wrong.
us.
It's okay. I'm sorry. I'm not mentioning that name again. So, what is your next move now in your sustainable and PW, your
Um,
advocacy, and now with the STEM, the chemistry? Yes, new
yeah.
love.
Well, I would say my next step, well, I think we've always been living in the next step every day without waiting for, okay, now this is the time for the next step. Well, for me, my long term goal is eventually to work with a very high recognized body for humanitarian. And I've already worked with it in my capacity through UNFPA, but I'm looking forward to a very higher position either way, but also of course to continue with working through my own means and through my own means and capacity through my nonprofit, as I also drove into getting to a PhD position. That's a promise for me. I really have to get myself into a PhD position. Yeah.
It's okay. I'm a 30 PhD holder in UK and in Africa. Okay, thank you so much, Trisha. It was very nice. I think I've walked through Oxford through you.
Yeah,
Or
you're
let me say,
welcome.
you're pulling us through that energy. They always say, when it's your time, the universe always converges towards that. So you're trying to pull everyone towards that energy of Oxford, Cambridge, let me Yale and Harvard. All those big names that we've had, we are trying to get to that, and we will be there soon. Yeah. So thank you so much, Trish, for being with us till this last minute. And I want to appreciate you big time, because you have shared a lot. And maybe you didn't intend to share all that, but your secrets are safe. Yeah, we won't use it against you. And always stay tuned we always eager to know that we have our, as you walk into those spaces, we know if we are mentoring people to walk into those spaces, we have great people like you in those spaces, and you're genuinely ready to help them. And they can always follow you on LinkedIn at Patricia Mativo, right? MSC. Yes, and also on all the social media channels that you're in, because you always have something for everyone. I say, yeah. So thank you so much, baby. If you have a last word as I end this conversation, I'll give you a minute or two.
Oh, actually, Val, just thank you very much for inviting me into your AI Chemisphere series, and I'm really truly honored to even be invited in a month that's, supporting or respecting women or highlighting the achievements of women. So I'm really too truly honored, and thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed my session, and I look forward to watching your next episodes. Yeah, I've actually subscribed to your channel.
It's okay. It's okay. Thank you so much, and may your graduation period extend longer and come with
Amen.
bigger and greater news. And happy belated International Women's Day. Bye. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.